get used to the time lapse as well. It's because you're such a long way away in Scotland.
There's a time delay, is there?
Yeah, yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
So you're studying and working. So tell us a bit about what you do. I know what you do, but you're a counsellor, you're a coach, you're a hypnotherapist.
Yeah, and I'm also spent the last few years doing what was supposed to be a part-time course in a master's degree. So I completed that about a year ago, and I have an MSc in the neuroscience, psychology, and mental health.
How wonderful! Well done. That's excellent.
Thank you. And it's quite funny because you're one of the big parts of that journey before we talk about what lockdown in Marlowe's like. One of the things on your website is about something about dyslexia. And I discovered in year kind of 2 that I'm quite dyslexic. And it was quite I suppose it wasn't really a shock to me because I've always coped and survived quite nicely in the world, but have always wondered why do some people find this so straightforward and easy, and I have to work really hard at it. And that explained a lot. And one of the tutors said to me, she was brilliant supervisor for my dissertation, and she just said to me one day, who's the alien that writes the essays compared to the woman that talks to me?
Yeah.
Oh, are they that bad? Well, she said they're not bad, but they don't bear any resemblance to what we talk about.
I'm laughing because the exact same thing happened to me. First year at uni, and my lecturer said, "Have you ever been tested for dyslexia?" And I said, "No." And he says, "No, go give it a go." So I was 31 or 32 when I found out I was dyslexic, and it was just what I needed to hear. It just solidified a lot of things that I'd thought about myself. So there, we've got that in common too.
It just blew me away, and my brothers sat there in complete denial about whether they could be too, because it rocked the world of how you talk about beliefs and identity, but it rocked the world that one of us might not have been not been thinking anywhere near the way the others did. It's like we all come from a family and we've all got something in common, and they were more shocked than I was. And until one of the questions you get asked is, did your language develop at normal rates when you were a child? Do you have any feedback about that? And one of my mother's pieces of feedback was that I was a really lazy child, and that my brother had to do all the translating for me. So he would go and ask for things for me, and he was 10 months older than me. And it didn't occur to you that my language was late in developing, did you? You called me lazy, and that's what so many people who have dyslexia get called.
Yeah, you're lazy.
Call me lazy sometimes now. I'll buy into that, and I'll say I'm having a think about something. Don't call me lazy.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on this pandemic and life in lockdown and life after lockdown?
Oh my God. When you said these, I was going to talk about, we were going to talk about these things. I thought, oh my God, I have no idea. What am I actually? Well, number one, I'm going to say lockdown in Marlow, it has to be a privilege. We live in a beautiful part of the world, but as a person who lives here all the time, and I do a lot of work from home, I'm actually quite frustrated because there's lots of people out on my walk. And I'm thinking, where have they all come from? But there's no traffic on the roads except cyclists. But we spend our life trying to avoid people with the dogs. We have a little routine. My husband is an executive for a software company. So life carries on the same for him. He's working from home. He's been working from home for about a month now.
How are you finding that? How are you finding being at home with your husband most of the day?
Well, I don't see him. I don't see him any more than I did before. Except that he likes lunch, and if he's very lucky, he gets drinks served to him throughout the day. But that destroys my routine enormously. He's very, very privileged. It's beautiful. I already led a very almost introverted life at home. I work with my clients. We have a small network of friends. But even then, you start to realize, well, I miss the liberty. I miss my liberty. And I used to work as a policewoman, and it's quite interesting because, you know, I can remember visiting. It's no longer a women's prison, but a prison in Holloway Road. And when you go through the doors of a prison and you're delivering a prison, and the doors lock behind you, it's not just the prisoner's liberty that's stopped at that moment, it's yours. And I think that that's quite profound for me. I miss even though I'm a good citizen and I do as I'm told, I miss my liberty. Really a lot. Just the freedom to do what you want when you want. You know, get in your car, go to the shops, or just drive somewhere to put the dogs for an extra special walk or something like that. Liberty, freedom. That to me is the most containing element.
It feels as if there's a loss, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is a loss. It is a loss. And yeah, it is a loss. Yeah, I don't think you can be more profound than that, because I think for everybody, it's a period of echoes, isn't it? You know, like I lost my mother 4 years ago, and I'm rather grateful that she's not here for this, because I think it would, you know, it's devastating. It's devastating. It's just not the loss of my liberty; it's the loss of all of the life and the love, which is so tragic. And you know, the loss of confidence for our health workers in the people who are supposed to be supporting them. So there's a lot of loss in lots of different variations, isn't there, Ross?
Of course there is. Yeah, and the grieving that we go through with each, so there's a grief within a grief, and it's like we've got a macrocosm of what we've lost, which is the basic stuff, but then you've then lost the connection to family. And then, well, so within the connection to family, I sat and I wrote it down. What do I get from each of my sisters? What do I get from my mother? And then I wrote all that down. And then I went, well, what did that give me? I ended up with a whiteboard, which started off as just not seeing mum and not seeing my sisters, to then I had like 5 things coming off each atom, that then had 5 things coming off each atom. So within each of those torsion points where it splits into another loss, there's a myriad of loss within one engagement that's been broken. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And of course, you're very analytical in the way that you put it up onto a whiteboard, or you get it out onto a piece of paper. And what so many people don't realize is that what you just almost drew was a set of neurons, wasn't it? And all of those neurons are connected in all people, whether they consciously or unconsciously are aware, and that provides, and therefore that's on them. It's something that they're not even processing while trying to look after and trying to do all of the things that you're trying to do. So it's been all of that going on. So I live, as I said, I lead a privileged life, but I do have an enormous amount of losses, and we've been processing so much while this has been going on. And actually, I'm really delighted. I'm going to give you a piece of fantastic news. Now, I don't have any kids, so I don't have any responsibilities in that perspective, but I do have 2 fur kids. And just before we came on air, my dog's oncologist called to tell me that the cancer wasn't the worst case scenario by any stretch of the imagination. Yes.
Great news.
It's fantastic news. And it's
great news.
It's really great news. He might come
awesome. That's awesome.
He might come in and reveal himself in a minute. So we have poodles. It's a poodle household.
I see them. They're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous.
And this is the soft one I keep for chatting to people to make them smile.
That's that's a great bit of news. Yeah, I watch you with
Yeah.
your dogs and where you walk them, and you put pictures up. And one's like a
Yeah.
grey colour, isn't it? It's like a
That's Casper. That's
Casper.
Casper. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had a poodle called Casper.
You had a
We
Casper?
had a poodle called Casper. Yeah, it wasn't grey. It was like a creamy coloured poodle, and it was one of the big ones.
Yeah.
But it never ever got clipped. It never got clipped. So it was a big shaggy kind of dog. And yeah, my sister used to look after Casper. That's brought back some memories.
That's bizarre as well, isn't it?
There we go. There we go. Connection. So yeah, people are we now, as we turn inwards? And you said you were talking about connections, both consciously and unconscious connections that we have with things. And as that stimuli, that external stimuli has been taken away, a lot of people that I'm speaking to, and I'm interested to hear what your take on it is that when that external stimuli has been dropped, we start to look deeper at what connections we have with things and why.
Interesting. So so I mean, from a
so the world, the externals, sort of the dimmer switches. Well, not the dimmer switch, because the dimmer switch feels in a lot of ways that it's put on brighter. But what I feel, I guess, is with 50% cars on the road and definitely 50% less people when you go out walking, it's almost like the energy of those people, if you like, that's creating a buzz around, that acts as like an invisible fog between you and the world that you inhabit. And people are saying that they experience a more brighter world. They're actually seeing things that they didn't see before. So as you disconnect from the external world, which I guess is people, mobile phones, work, all the things that gave you meaning, you're then dropping inside and you're getting the opportunity to see the world slightly more as it's meant to be than with light pollution.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I think okay, let me just process what you said to me then, because I'm just going to process that with the idea of, if we think about how as humans we work. So I'm going to put my neuroscience hat on for a moment, okay? And because I agree, I really process the world from this perspective. So what I'm hearing is this. In fact, I even have it written down just here. Look at that.
Wow. There you go. This is totally live. This wasn't pre-planned.
Masters, and it's a very important feature about this concept of whether or not we are multitaskers or not. But let me step back from that, because the idea is that really, because the way our brains work, we only ever focus on one thing at a time. We're not multitaskers, and actually it is the speed at which we switch our focus from narrow to broad, to narrow over there, to broad again, back down to focus on this. This is what causes so much overhead in our or low or overhead or underhead. There's a word, underneath noise in our existence. So maybe as we chunk differently, for me, I'm making sense of what you've said, is what people are experiencing, is that at home, children's lives are chunked differently to when they are at school. Parents' lives are differently chunked. They are, and this is really interesting, because if they are workers online 8 hours a day, they're not actually doing very different tasks to what they normally do. But that's not the reality for a lot of people. They're only able to work so many hours a day, and that is being switched between those things. So that forcing things downwards, I'm wondering whether it's a question of how people are trying to make this work. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering whether they're seeing things brighter because their stress levels are going up. Mm-hmm. I'm just giving you a completely I'm just wondering about what you say. Their perspectives are different because they're highly at the moment. I'm not sure. Lots of people are very highly stimulated at the moment, even though they are locked down.
We've got two very different camps. We've got the people that are struggling with it.
Yes.
Which their stress levels are going to have went up, and there's people that have actually are producing more. I had a conversation with a chap this afternoon, and he's finding that he's a lot more productive working from home. Now he's only a 25-year-old guy with no family, but he's doing much more, and he's also and he described it as he's been more creative in the kitchen. His girlfriends gave him feedback that, he's been a lot more adventurous in what he's preparing and what he's cooking. And I was speaking with Lucy yesterday, and she said exactly the same thing. But he still has to do his 8-hour day.
Yes.
He's not got the commute. So what's changed? What's causing him to be thriving in lockdown? And a lot of people are surviving in lockdown.
There's lots of people are asking that question, and we almost have to go back possibly to actual personality types. Mm-hmm. And for many people, and this is a big issue for companies, and obviously I stay very connected to companies because my hubby he's responsible for 400 or 500 people. And introverted people take their energy from internally. When they have to go out and they have to catch the train and they have to pass the time of day and they have to put on their armor to be good citizens in the workplace, they have an overhead or an underhead that they have to manage all the time when they're at work. And kind of the people who hang around the middle, which I'm sort of one of, I think, rather than a raging extrovert, that I'm okay. I can, it wasn't so tough for me to go to work. But some people do actually find the workplace really hard to cope with. And then particularly if they are in a creative job, or say they're in technology, they're in a programming job, or they're doing this or doing that, they are constantly being interrupted by the supervisor, by the team. Will we getting this right? So now people have the opportunity to go and do their thing. Then they can take it for feedback, and then they can amend in their own time as well. It's not like they're having to do this constant focus, broaden, focus over here, switch task here, different skills, and they can find that really satisfying. So there is a real reason why some people are actually really enjoying. I wouldn't say enjoying, they'll still have those feelings of lockdown, but from a creativity and productivity point of view, it's really, really working for some people. And in fact, companies are already starting to be a bit concerned, because those that get that balance really well, they're worried about how those employees are going to feel about being pulled back into an office when this is over.
Tell me more.
So I don't know that they've even started to solve that, because everybody is in crisis and management mode still, and rhythm of business. But moving forward, it's going to be something HR departments think long and hard about. But there's a lot of evidence about how to bring sensitive employees back to work, or how to bring people who've been out of the workplace back to work. And we've got to thank a lot of women who've had babies who've forged that path, and a lot of people who've had illnesses over a long period of time. So maybe you don't go all straight back into working at work. Maybe you permanently stay 2 or 3 days at home and 2 days in the office, or two on, 2 off, however it starts to manifest. I think that the world working might change a great deal, but for other people, they won't be able to wait. They'll be running back to the office to see their friends, chat, and get on with their work.
But wouldn't it be interesting if this had been planned somewhat better and it hadn't been forced upon us with a pandemic? But because we've never been in this situation before, but is there somebody in big companies or even medium-sized companies that are measuring and monitoring their staff's productivity, availability, general well-being, health and happiness, etc., etc.? And if this is now given us the opportunity to then look and still be examining that person's productivity, well-being, sick days, etc., 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 it's then going to highlight those that are better off as home workers versus those of us that work better in the working environment.
Yeah.
Which
I was going to say, to answer your question, I think it depends. I think that there are organisations well, I was going to use that horrible phrase, capital assets are so valuable. I mean, like these are people they are part of your company's product. You don't want them walking out of the door. Mm-hmm. And if they've been staying for a long time, I really feel better off doing it this way. But maybe the company had a culture, we need more of you here. Maybe that will change for those individuals, because I think that there are lots of people in who work much better that way. And actually, I think what a lot of companies are realizing is that the travel overhead to places is so tough on people. I mean,
of course,
really grueling. I mean, my husband travels. He travels a great deal normally, but if he goes up to London, even going up to London, and we're only 35 miles out of London, that can often take him an hour and a half to get to his office. It's astonishing to go 35 miles with public transport, and it can often take an hour and a half. It's just,
goodness.
Yeah, and that's the reality for many, many, many people. So, yeah, I think maybe lots of people have been saying for a long time, why do we have to work like this? You know, why can't I do this at home? But you've still got a generation of managers who believe people, you know, are actually really working at home so that they don't have to have childcare, or they're working at home so they can get their DIY jobs done. It's I've worked from home for years. It's just not like that. You've still got to do your job.
Of course you do. Of course you do. And it highlights not a failing, but somewhere where we can succeed as a society if we were starting to put the needs of the employees at heart, because they're healthier, they're happier, they are more productive, they're going to be less sick days, there's going to be less of a drain in our economy for people taking time off in the sick, less need for prescriptions, less need for therapy. And it's certainly a forward-thinking way to look at what humanity could be like.
Yes, it could be different. It could be much nicer. It could be a lot less pollution because of the vehicles and the amount of transport needed. But hey, we're going to have to. I mean, life after lockdown. I mean, it really is.
What would you like, just as a hypothetical question, right? As a hypothetical question, completely out there, what would be your utopia? What would be your utopia for coming out of this? What would be the best learning that we could have from this?
That work doesn't have to be in an office.
Mm-hmm. And school doesn't have to be at school?
That's an interesting question. I think for some children, school doesn't need to be at school, but I think for a lot of children, it does. Maybe the same numbers. Maybe I don't know how it would happen. Like the amount of information that our young people need to absorb to survive, but then that's an economic survival. I don't know.
Because isn't you know, I'm just curious, that is our schooling system not been set up to prepare us for working in an office? You know, is our schooling system not been aligned with with steering us towards that industrial way of working rather than a digital way of working?
I think school is preparing students to work in a digital way and in a thought and in a knowledge-based way. And I think actually that again is one of the issues that companies have faced. For example, the problem of students using better software at university than they get to use when they come to work. Okay. So I do think that children are taught to have a better, a more digital experience outside of school. But I don't know that the workplace caught up with them. So actually, maybe this is a very good adjustment point for us to realise that, the big issue with schooling, as they've discovered now, and I was asking the question the other night, why aren't there more online lessons? Well, the answer is it's an equality and poverty issue. Not for a group and a class of people, the children will have access to laptops. And if the school says your child has to have a laptop as opposed to an iPhone or a smartphone or an iPad, the parents would make it happen. They'd walk over hot coals to get the laptop. Mm-hmm. But suddenly foisted upon a large number of the population, it opens up the gap of the inequality. But there are lots of children who do not have access to this technology equipment except at school. So therefore, you can't place everything online, because you still, even though the fantasy is everything's online, gaming's online, but they're different devices, and they haven't made them multi-use. So, and they've not made them multi-use for a reason. Obviously, lots of games are very educational, but it's not a mechanism for standardized delivery of information en masse. And that made me suddenly realise is, yes, they've still got to go to school, because until we can balance out the inequality of delivering the syllabus online, they could deliver the syllabus online, but can everybody receive it? And then you've got the personality types who need to be experientially, you and I, in the room, watching the teacher speak, experiencing the learning concept, because that's the way we learn.
Yeah.
If I had had to have if I'd have had to have learned online back then, it would have been impossible. I wouldn't have been able to do it. My attention would have been held enough. It was hard enough in my 50s to do it, but at least I could say, hang on, you committed to this, and utilize all of those adult skills I have to keep myself focused and set my goals. But I wouldn't have been able to do it as a kid.
No, and I'm not seeing a lot of people talking about the children that were reliant on breakfast club and free school dinners.
Yeah.
And the children that maybe father, mother might be an alcoholic or a drug addict, and that's at least 6 or 7 hours away from being in that toxic environment. There may be parents that are abusive towards one another or volatile. And my concern is for those children right now that are in an environment at home where it's not conducive to their mental health, their emotional health, their physical well-being, let alone their education.
Well, it becomes survival for them, doesn't it? So those poor kids have got 7 months of they're 2 to 3 to 4 months of actual survival mode. However, they manage to invoke that for them. Perhaps that might be in game playing. Perhaps that might be in TV. Yes, or it might be in that some are captured by clever teachers who say, "Come and join. Come in tomorrow." And some have kept very vulnerable children attending as if they were key workers. I have heard that has happened in places.
Okay.
where new have been able to identify the very most vulnerable and just, they just go, no, you can carry on coming to school if you want, and you'd be surprised how possibly people crept out. You're right, but all of those things, it just reveals those inequalities, doesn't it? And this isn't a political broadcast. It's just a matter of fact chat about why couldn't we take education like we do work, because not all kids are equal, and
not all kids are equal, and not each household is equal right now, and there's a lot of people struggling with their emotional. I'm not prepared for it because I don't know where the cards are going to fall, but I definitely believe that there's two pandemics going on right now. There's a pandemic of the COVID-19, and there's a pandemic of anxiety and depression that's lurking in the background, that's just about ready to raise its head.
Yeah. And that brings us to something that I know he's a friend of yours as well. The doctor said the other day on the neurofeedback about the two things, there being trauma and inflammation.
Yeah.
And there's a great deal of trauma, and I ceased to do the definition with the big T or the little t or a C.
Trauma's trauma.
Yeah. And inflammation is inflammation, and we are living in an inflammation. When he didn't go into that in a great detail, but it's the science about inflammation is really, if we're honest, and the mind-body connection of that is quite in its infancy in terms of wide acceptance. But inflammation is desperate. And we are in, so there's a great model that people talk about, which is which lots of the natural sciences use, which is top down, bottom up, outside in. Yeah, so top down processing from a neuroscience point of view is processing within the frontal cortex and those ideas there. To the bottom up is genes and the genes and your actual hormones and your endocrine systems. And outside in is what you take in with your senses and what you breathe in and what you eat in and what you consume. So all of those have an impact on the organism. And at the moment, of course, you can bet your life that a lot of those environments where there's a great deal of trauma, as you mentioned, there may be drugs and there may be alcohol, and you could translate that into very poor diet for the children. Very high sugar, very processed carbs, saturated fats, easy to produce foods. Yeah? You've frozen.
100%.
Oh, no, you haven't frozen.
100%.
Yeah, so you've got that outside in. The living environment of it, and that is a really tricky combination of stuff, with genes being switched on and turned off all over the body. It's so funny with you being reversed, because I keep wanting to, there you go, it's gone the wrong way now. It's really tricky.
But if you start to speak out against them, then they come down on you. You're not allowed to how you then go.
Sorry, is it me? I keep losing.
Hello.
I lost you.
Hi.
I'm back.
You're back.
Yes, I'm back.
I wasn't saying very much. I was just waiting for you.
Sorry, you've gone green screen on me. Is it me?
That's okay. Can you?
I can hear you. Yeah. There you go.
The causes of inflammation. We're being bombarded by neon latest gadgetry, the latest technology, bigger and better things. Advertisements were being absolutely bombarded, and the impact that that has on the human organism is detrimental to our health.
Yes,
and it's like detrimental, and the level of inflammation, and how I think inflammation's at the source of all illness.
Yeah, yeah, it is. The challenge being is finding simple ways to explain how at the cellular level that happens and why it happens. And it took a master's degree course to help me understand it. So, and then you have the, even if you don't, well, get near, I won't say understand it, even get a baseline of understanding what the theories are. And then even then it doesn't necessarily help people, which goes back into the whole world of addictions. It doesn't necessarily help you change your behavior. You can, and sometimes the best way to do it is to modify in lots of different areas just a bit. Just protect yourself everywhere, just a bit. Don't try, if you don't have to, if it's not threatening your life, don't try and cut things out, just modify. Lots of chunks of modification everywhere, not everything at the same time. That creates an anxiety.
Of course.
So it's been, well, wow, life after lockdown. I tell you, for me, one of the saddest things has been the seaside. There, where's the seaside? That one. We are blessed to have another home, but we chose not to go there right at the beginning because we had, number one, it wasn't the right thing to do, because where we live here in Marlow, we are within a 20-mile radius, we have 3 hospitals. Within a 50-mile radius, we have 6 or 7. Where we are in Cornwall, within a 50-mile radius, there are 2. Within a 45-mile radius, there are none. Resources in parts of this country are really very, very different. I mean, it must be like that in areas of Scotland. You are very remote and you're a long way from things, but people don't realise, and when you're down in Cornwall, you're a long way from things. There's only one main hospital in Cornwall, in Truro. The others are in Devon across the border.
Yeah.
So it just is wrong to stretch resources in that way when you don't have to. So, and that brings.
So what advice would you give for people to be dealing with inflammation? What would be or stress? Because stress is one of the main causes of inflammation.
Okay, I think I'm probably the first place I'd say is what's your breathing doing? I'd always say, what's your breathing doing, and where are you breathing, and how are you breathing? And my clients always get a little bit bored, because if they come to see me, I get them lying on their back breathing, so they can actually physically feel what breathing through their whole body feels like. Because breathing is just the best friend you've got. Well, we know why, but breath, I always start with breath work. Don't start with breathing properly, because it makes such a difference to your well-being. And a little anecdote on that about COVID-19 is my brother has been very ill in America, and though he did go to the ER room, but he was able to recover at home. But he spent 4 days waking up with blood oxygen levels down at the low, 94, 93, 94. And I badgered him every day to do his breathing exercises. And one day he said to me, I got myself to 98 after the breathing exercises today. I think I'm on the way up.
Brilliant.
And he said, he was like, yes, breathe. I would say learn to breathe. And in the learning to breathe and in the breath work, there comes quietness. And then you can contemplate, what else might I be able to do to help myself? I then use very physical mechanisms now before I even get on to what we put in our mouths. I would use bilateral stimulation, whether it's this, whether it's this.
Yeah.
I saw another great one today. Hang on, am I going to be able to do it? So that's butterfly taps bilaterally. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Get that bilateral stimulation going. I look, because that's something I'm very interested in studying at PhD level, is what's going on with this bilateral stimulation, really. That gets, and you'll find if you're not breathing properly, you know what happens. Your body will make you take a deep breath. Butterfly wings. And then of course we have the touch, which is called in many circles the Havening touch now, which is a stroke, or this is on the internet and this is just called a hug, a personal hug. For stress reduction right now, I would look to these active stress reductions. And it was really interesting, the other thing about the grid. This is like an active way of relaxing yourself, not because the going into a calm, peace, meditative state actually takes quite a lot of skill. And some people find that quite tricky. So active relaxation points. And then also we've been asked not to touch our faces. So I don't get people to do face stroking. But another great one is always eye movement. Just move your eyes from right to left, to right to left, to right to left. And that, again, does it to me all the time. Makes me take the breath. And then you can look at, of course, there are things that would help us. And, let's look at the things that we should try to do rather than the things that we shouldn't do. Now, I was just finishing an optical, like a multiple choice thing for another piece of study I've been doing. And going back through the notes and going back through the videos, I was reminded about the brain is attracted to negative. So what I'm going to say is just eat an extra piece of fruit or two a day, eat some vegetables, drink some water.
Yeah.
Because if
stay away from salt and vinegar crisps, mayonnaise, highly inflammatory foods.
Yes.
It's so good that in a time of stress we somehow crave more than ever.
But the interesting thing happens in your body is when you do up the intake of your fibrous vegetables, because of course, having said that, some fibers are very inflammatory to people. So it's all very personal, personal medicine after COVID-19, you watch it soar because people, the medics are just like, whoa, how come that person came out with a rash and that person didn't? And it's going to really matter going forward. That would be a big predictor moving forward over the next 25 years. Medicine has to be
goodness.
And then that's why I say, well, just eat a little bit more of those fruits and that raw stuff. Eat some lettuce and stuff like that, because it's funny, when you eat them in balance, the other stuff starts to fall away in terms of your cravings. Oh, and then there's always that one, isn't there?
Bring in your hands.
Yes. So I'm not a nutritionist, but one of the wonders about studying neuroscience is that it does bring in to the field the idea of the enteric. I remember you talking about this, the enteric brain, the enteric system, the second brain, and other people talk now quite a bit about the third brain, the heart. So the three brain system, look after the tummy. That's the other thing. And if you are mean to it for a couple of days, it's not the end of the world, but be nice to it for a while. Just a general overall kindness. But if it's stress release right now, it would be active rhythmic and breath, because I really think that people's heads are too full. So giving them a technique that is in their heads to think about is not going to get them out of state quickly enough for them to take on new information. That's my little theory anyway. I'd be interested to know, if anyone's listening to this, what people think about that. I really do believe we need a somatic outlet for stress right now.
Absolutely.
And this is
absolutely.
This is beautiful oxytocin, you know. So if you're by yourself, you know, and if you haven't got a pet to hug, I'll tell you, there's a big grey poodle dog called Casper who's going to get lots of hugs tonight. Then these are really great interventions. And as I said, I was thinking I might do a PhD, but the PhD was going to be around does touch heal trauma, and now I'm more along the lines with does bilateral stimulation heal trauma more than touch, because it's more, it encompasses more. But my tutor who's interested at the moment is kind of like, narrow down.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Yes, that's not easy for me. Not easy for me at all.
No, and that's not a bad thing.
No. So I was going to say, if I answer the questions that you set me at the beginning.
I think you have. I think you've answered and you've gave your narrative on it, which is important and valuable. And I think people starting to think about creativity and the meaning of creativity and seeing it from a different perspective and being kind with ourselves and looking after ourselves and accepting that there's a lot of stress going on, accepting that. And it's been really lovely to see. It's been way too long. I remember when you were talking there and you said, and I did that presentation in London, and I was talking about the enteric nervous system. Everybody looked at me like I had horns.
No.
Yes.
I know they did.
Goodness.
Just because they're called neurotransmitters, it doesn't mean they're not in there too.
You know, I got booed off stage talking about it. Now it's all the thing. Now everybody's talking about it.
Everybody's talking about it. It's really, really important. And, you know, lots of concepts have changed over the last 5 to 10 years enormously, like the concept of the blood-brain barrier. Yeah.
Neuroplasticity is only 20-25 years old.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And so, now that's normal.
It's,
well, you know, I talk about, you know, if like EEGs are being read, and with Dr. Antonio Marawan and Jay Gunkelman was speaking to me last night, and they guys are just absolute geniuses in their field, and they can measure electrical activity from the brain a couple of inches off the source of the scalp. And if we're inhabiting an electromagnetic field, a field of consciousness, and we're communicating with that field of consciousness from our brain, which is only putting out a certain amplitude of electricity, yet the heart has got neural networks in it as well, similar to the brain, about the size of, I think, you know, like maybe a mouse or a rat or something like that. And it creates 60 times more electrical amplitude than the brain. And if we started to communicate with that field of consciousness, whatever you want to call it, God, whatever floats your boat, but we're communicating continually with an environment. And if we're cut off from our body and we're cut off from our heart, then we're going to be creating a reality based on that. And when we start to communicate, with that environment from our heart, it's surely going to replicate 60 times greater than the amplitude of the brain. And then you speak like that and people think you've got horns. But that's exactly what Jesus was saying 2020 years ago.
Yeah, your Bible knowledge is better than mine.
But, you know.
Yes.
That you know, love.
Well, he did. He did say that. He did, exactly.
Love, forgive, and accept.
Because if you don't, what it builds up inside you, you don't want. You actually don't want that stuff inside you. And you know that that interplay between acceptance and forgiveness is incredibly important, because if you can't forgive, you have to accept, and you have to wholeheartedly accept that you're choosing not to forgive if you feel it, you can't do that. And this is a lot of the basis of acceptance and commitment therapy. You know, you have to, but they're tricky concepts, aren't they? They are hard. They're hard to get into. I was going to say your head. Maybe I don't need to get it in my head. I just need to feel it in my heart.
Why not? Why not give it a try?
Yeah, I know.
You know, why not surrender? And you know, faith is climbing up on a branch and cutting the branch off and waiting for the tree to fall. You know, faith is just taking that step. And whatever it is that's, you know, if you're not happy, you've got one life. If you're focusing on the negative and you're focusing on that turmoil and anxiety and trauma that's inside us, if we continue to feed into that, that's the reality we're going to create.
Yeah.
We do have a choice.
We do. I agree with you there. And, you know, whatever your choice, and this is why I love these techniques, because we are a body as well as a mind. And the central nervous system just works as one thing, and it's there all the way through. It doesn't stop there. It's taking in information all the time from all around us, not just this information as well. So it's really important. And in the spaces that you get created, there you have an opportunity to think, you know, genuinely think about where your faith, whatever that faith is settled in, what it means, how it supports you. Yeah, it's really interesting. Nice ideas, Ross. Nice ideas. Yeah,
I love speaking with you. It's been way too long. We meet such lovely people on our journeys, don't we? And they bypass us and time goes by and we just let time go by. But thank you very much for taking your time to come and talk with us tonight. And thank you for calling me when I had went off grid a year ago. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure, and thank you for asking me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. God bless. Thank you very much, Louise. You have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.